As music instructors, we all want great students, right? We teach them something, they go home and practice, then they come back the next week ready to learn more. After all, that's how we were when we took lessons, so our students should be the same, right? Probably not. Your experience in lessons was probably unlike most of your students. This is Rock School Proprietor Podcast. Welcome to Rock School Proprietor Podcast. I'm John Kazicki.
And I'm Mandy York.
Hello, Mandy. How are you?
Good. How's it going, John?
Pretty good. We're going to talk about, well, it's kind of a weird topic. We're going to talk about how we were the weird students, I think, when we were in lessons.
Yeah.
So this week, on occasion, when we have like older students who show an interest in either helping out at the rock school or maybe they want to learn how to teach, I encourage that, right? So earlier this week, I was working with a student, older student, and he's 16, and he's interested in learning how to teach lessons and learning more about the inner workings of what we do. So in those situations, as well as like with teacher training, I have a whole packet on like things that I think instructors need to know before they start teaching. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that I was talking with the student about is how he is not the typical student. He's the weird student. And the reason I think that is so important for him to know and for, I guess, new instructors or really any instructor to know is because at least when I started teaching, I just assumed like my experience in lessons and how I experienced lessons as a student was pretty much universal. Mm-hmm. It's not the case.
No.
Yeah. What about you? Did you ever have that realization?
In what I'm doing, maybe not as strongly as you did, but I definitely see even just within the last 5 years or so as time goes on that like my students, really meaning my parents, are different than what I was when I was in their place.
Okay, like when you were a
young mom.
Yeah. In music together. Like you were a student, quote unquote.
Right.
You were a parent in music together.
Yes.
Yeah, taking the classes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Different.
Well, so I remember for me when I first started teaching private guitar lessons, and we talked about this on a previous episode where I sort of fell into teaching private lessons. No experience, I didn't go to school for music. I didn't I was never shown any sort of techniques. I literally was just like, I started teaching one day and the guy who ran the music store was like, all right, well, you're going to be in here. And that was it. That was all I got. So it was a while before I learned that my experience was so different, because when I was taking lessons as a kid, and this is guitar lessons, because I was a bad piano student. We've also talked about that. When I took piano lessons as a kid, I was a horrible student and I never practiced. I didn't want to learn anymore, really. Or I should say, I didn't want to learn anymore from my piano instructor. I wanted to learn more, but there was a disconnect there. But as a guitar student, this is pre-internet. So my guitar lessons were always on a Wednesday. Usually by Friday of that week, I'd already mastered whatever my instructor showed me on Wednesday. So by the time the next lesson came around the next week, I was dying to learn something new. I was like, please, let's do more. And then when I started teaching, it was a while before I figured out I was the weird one, because I just assumed all of my students would do what I did, which is like go home and work on their lesson material and have fun playing their guitar and come back and want to learn more. So I would have students that would come in week after week and they're just like, no, I didn't practice. I didn't practice at all this week. And then it hit me like, oh, okay. So I do have a couple of students who show up each week and they want to learn more, but all the rest are like, varying degrees of either like, no, I didn't work on this at all. I hadn't touched my guitar, or like, yeah, I worked a little bit on it, but I was the weird one. And so me realizing that and just kind of feeling stupid also, like, how was I so dumb? I just assume like, I think it's important to have those conversations with instructors, at least when I'm hiring instructors, just to make sure they've thought about that.
Mm-hmm.
Because our natural instinct is like, oh, well, my experience is just like everyone else's. Right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So a little bit more on, can you add more onto like how that looks in your studio with Music Together? Do you have to train your instructors like that? Or is it more about the parents?
Well, I think, yeah, we do train the instructors on that because we are training them on how to educate the parents. And that's what this is all about in my experience, in my world, in the Music Together world. I think when I think about the differences of when either I was younger or even just when my kids were younger.
Yeah.
Like I think about, which I want to hear from you too with your older students on this.
Okay.
But I think about, well, what is different? Why are they different? And I've got kids that are going to preschool earlier. I think that's a trend.
Mm-hmm.
More kids are in preschool before they even enter kindergarten.
Yeah.
And they're also in a lot of activities and they're kept very busy.
That's a great point that I hadn't thought of.
That, yeah, that's pretty big. So we're trying to, which I think this is great. And I try to remind my parents, like, okay, you're coming in, leaving it at the door for 45 minutes. That's the beauty of this program. Mm-hmm. You're setting everything else aside and you are participating with your kids, right? It's not putting them in the little ballet studio and watching them from the window in the hallway, right?
Right, yeah.
Like for 45 minutes, we are sitting down and playing together with the kids. I think that's different. Mm-hmm. My experience, anecdotal experience, because they're so structured and in so many different activities that it takes educating those parents and getting them out of their comfort zone, really, in some cases, not all, to like make music with your kids. Just make the music, just focus and play.
Okay.
But yeah, that extracurricular thing is really big because some are running in late because they were just at the pool.
Right.
And some are like, oh, we have to leave 2 minutes earlier so we can get to gymnastics.
Yes.
They're go. And my goal in my program, I'm not expecting them to practice every week, but my goal in my program is that they're making music at home, right? Yeah. Here are your CDs. Here's the app that you can listen to music. Here's a really fun, colorful book you can look at and play with the music together. Well, if there isn't as much downtime to do those things and just integrate them into your daily routines, then that's different,
I had not really thought about how many more activities kids are in these days compared to like probably when we were learning music.
Yeah.
That was really all I had.
Yeah.
That was like the only activity I had from week to week was like my guitar lesson. Other than that, I was, like kind of feral.
Yeah. Right.
So, and that's what that makes me think about is it's about managing expectations, right? So expectations, and maybe not even managing, but aligning also expectations, like expectations of the parent, expectations of the instructor, expectations of the student. And again, different situation, I think in private lessons, compared to what you're doing in Music Together. But I do want to focus a little bit on the private lesson thing, because that's, to me, seems to be where it sort of rears its ugly head, especially if we're talking about like my situation here, where I'm trying to help these new instructors, or like the trainee that I'm talking about, understand what the expectations are and manage their own expectations. And if they're going into it thinking, well, this is what I did as a student, that expectation is like, they were the star student, right? Like you were the star student when you had private lessons. I was the star student when I had guitar lessons, simply because we'd go to lesson, we'd be presented with some information, we'd be excited enough to want to practice it and perfect it, and then like delve into more. So we, like, that's the kind of student every instructor wants. But it's such a small percentage, I think, of the students that are in private lessons. So in managing these expectations, and like aligning them, that's really the key, right? Because private lesson environment, very static. You have there, and again, there's kind of that triangle of like people involved. You've got the student, you've got the parent, you've got the instructor. So finding that alignment between the three is always a thing. So again, it's interesting, like in managing that in your Music Together classroom, and I get where you're coming from. You're saying like, well, don't worry about anything else other than the 45 minutes that we're in this class. Do you feel like that's kind of all you need to do and you're good? Because you're essentially saying like, just focus on when you're here. Don't worry about the rest of the week. You're kind of giving them like a free pass, right? Like, don't worry about your student getting better.
Right. Yeah.
Don't worry about like your student having improved rhythm or being able to sing better next week. You're just giving them that free pass to be like, just be present in the class.
Yeah. There's a couple layers to that, I think. When, in my experience, being in groups, I've had directors say that before, right? Like, leave it all at the door. We're here to make music. And that's like joyful and therapeutic and good for you, right?
Yeah.
So that's good for my moms. Like, leave it at the door, be present, enjoy this. But it's also an educational piece, right? Because I want you present so that I can show you what to do. And the hope is that you take this home, right?
Yeah.
Right. So, that's a parallel, right? I am teaching them what to do at home. Your instructors are teaching your students what to do at home. But then I think about this, like you said, not all students are star students, right? So I manage my expectations by thinking like, because I know who my star students are. Even in this environment,
right.
Mom knows all the words, and I've got students, singing the tonic at the end of a song, and,
yeah,
and that's wonderful, and they're taking it home and running with it, making music really a part of their lives. But like you said, not everyone is going to be that, and you have to be okay with that. I think I know some teachers that struggle with that, they're just not, I don't think they're doing their music at home. I don't think they're playing at home. Yeah, I get it. Of course we want everybody to be a star.
Right.
But manage your expectations. Know that everyone's not going to. And at the very least, you can give them this 45 minutes, right?
Yeah.
At the minimum, they're getting this right now.
Yeah.
Once a week.
Yes.
So is it what you would want for yourself? No. But isn't it great that they're getting at least that?
Right. And I like, leave it at the door. That's fantastic. I'm gonna steal that. Yeah. Another thing that I explain to my instructors, because I see they get frustrated. They're like, oh, because the star students are always the easy ones.
Yeah.
They're always the easiest students to teach. So like, I'll see frustration and like, oh, we're working on the same thing every week, right? I always say, like, look, everyone is in this for a different reason. There are some kids who come here and like, yeah, that's the only time they're touching their instrument the entire week. But if that's improving their lives, right? If that's enriching their lives and making them feel connected to music, like really, who are we to say like, nope,
that's not enough?
Yeah, that's horrible, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's all, again, trying to manage expectations and align it. I break it down with my instructors in this little like training packet. And this is by no means like hard and fast, it's pretty loose, but just kind of to give examples, I say like, if you introduce a concept to a student and you kind of measure how long it takes them to master that concept. So if it's 1 week, I consider that an exceptional student. That's exceptional progress, right? 1 week, they're ready for more. If it's like 1 to 2 weeks, that's good progress. 2 to 3 weeks, average progress. 4 weeks, slow progress. Maybe more than 4 weeks, student might be struggling.
Mm-hmm.
So
you give this to your instructors? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
like
I give this to the instructors.
Yeah, and I like that there's no negative language in that either.
Well, and again, going back to like the easy students, right? The students you're going to enjoy, those students that are like making exceptional progress or good progress, again, they're the easy students. You're not going to have a problem with them. It's when the students are like average or slower, that's when I see the frustration from my instructors, right? And that's where I kind of have to combat that and kind of get their expectations in check, because one, like I don't want them to worry about it, right? Two, I don't want them to harp on the progress with the student to the point that the student then feels self-conscious or feels bad about it, right? Because again, they might not care about their progress. Their parents might not care about their progress. They might just be in here because, again, they just like music and they kind of casually want to learn a little bit more about it, right? And if that's what they're in this for, okay.
Yeah.
Great. It's counterproductive if then an instructor may be saying like, you need to practice more. You're not making progress like you should, right? So what I try and teach them also is if they get to that point where they feel like, oh, I showed this to the student 4 weeks ago. They're not getting any better on it. Chances are the student might be getting bored with it also. They might start to get frustrated or take a different situation where it's like, maybe the student legitimately is trying to get better, but, and they are taking music a little bit more seriously, but they're struggling because it's hard.
Yeah.
It's okay to like say, all right, let's put this aside. We'll come back to it in the future. Let's try something different. Keeps things fresh for the instructor, keeps things fresh for the student. There's no negative like cloud hanging over them.
Yeah.
So,
and that's connecting with the student, right? And discussing goals and expectations.
Yeah.
Like, hey, we've been working on this for a while. How do you feel about it? Right? Like, is this difficult? Talking about their goals and seeing if, they're over it and they want to move on to something else, or if they're frustrated with their progress. I think you need to watch out for that too, right? You don't want your student to be frustrated with their progress.
Yeah.
And come up with a game plan for that. Like, well, and getting to know the student. Well, what's going on? Well, I play football on Friday and then I do art class Saturday morning. Get a full picture of what your students are doing too.
Right.
And figure out, okay, if you are frustrated and you want to hone this skill or whatever it is, let's figure out how to do it in bite-sized pieces that fit your lifestyle schedule, whatever it is. Right?
Yeah. I think it's interesting though. Like I see sort of with what you do and with what I do at the rock school, there's sort of like three tracks. So with music together, you said it, it's like, okay, leave it at the door. There are no expectations, which is great because then you're just focused on what you're doing in the moment. With what I do, we've got the rock band program, but then we've also got some students who are just doing private lessons. I think this is a more important conversation for those students who are just doing private lessons.
Mm.
Again, because that environment is so static.
Yeah.
And it's like this one-on-one thing, and it's easy to fall into a routine. So it's about combating, I guess, those expectations for most of your students that aren't the star students.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with our rock band program, part of why we do it is because it's not 100%, the student is not 100% responsible for keeping themselves motivated like they would be in a private lesson. When we have them in band, there's interaction with the other students. They feel like a responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
So then to their band members to work on their parts and to be prepared. So again, not a static environment anymore. There's like, they've got accountability buddies, their band member. Yeah. It's like anything. If you're working out, right? It's always easier when you have a workout partner, because your partner's going to say like, hey, let's get this going when you are feeling down. And when they're feeling down, you say like, let's do this. So, but the private music instructor student dynamic doesn't necessarily work like that.
Right.
So that's how we sort of combat that at Michigan Rock School. It's like, well, do the band program, and you're going to want to do this because it's not just you. It's like you're doing it for your band members. There's a bigger thing that's going on, and like when you do it, you see how it all comes together in this bigger way.
Yeah, and increases motivation. Yeah.
I did not expect this conversation to go where it
I know
has gone, because it's really like what started is just as an instructor recognizing that we probably are not like most of our students. Mm-hmm. It sort of snowballed into this completely different thing.
Yes.
What
all good stuff.
Do you have any other thoughts or advice that you would give to, I guess this is more, again, about private music instructors. Right. Any thoughts?
I think the big thing for me was the expectation piece. You need the instructors to adjust those expectations.
I love that I think you could say, leave it at the door in any private lesson. Yeah. Again, think about that private instructor. I think about my instructors when they do get frustrated, how much relief they would feel if they were just like, all right, whatever. Like, I don't expect you to be great this week. Let's just do whatever. Mm-hmm. It just releases so much like negative baggage, I think.
Yeah. Well, in any area, when you let go of expectations, it does that for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hadn't prepared this, but this conversation reminds me of my public school teacher friends, mm-hmm. and their different philosophies. This is a different world too, different than yours or mine, mm-hmm. but some that have practice journals, and the kids need to practice so many minutes a week and turn those in every, Monday or Friday.
Yeah.
And that's part of their grade. And then others who have a philosophy of, you know what? You're in here every day. I get to see you in my classroom 5 days a week, and you're playing. That's great. If you want to go home and practice, awesome. And mm-hmm. we have lots of opportunities, extracurricular opportunities to get you playing more if you want to.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to grade you on that practice piece because, like we've described, there's different levels. You know, you don't want to deter someone from an activity because whether it's a private lesson or a school orchestra, because they don't have time for it.
Yeah.
If all you have time for is the 45 minutes a week, great.
Yeah.
And who knows what'll happen from there, but let's not diminish that, mm-hmm.
Yeah. I love it. I'm going to leave it at the door.
Cool.
I love that phrase. I'm just going to wrap this up, and we're going to say, leave it at the door. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of Rock School Proprietor Podcast. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, John.
If you have questions or topic suggestions, please send them to us at info@rockschoolproprietor.com. We would love to hear from you and consider them for the show. Show notes and transcripts for this and all episodes can be found at rockschoolproprietor.com. I'm at rock.school.proprietor on Instagram. I'd love to connect with you there, or on LinkedIn as John Kazicki. And please don't forget about our private Facebook group, Performance-Based Music Programs in Rock Schools. Come join us over there. If you enjoyed the show and gained insight from our conversation, then we count that as a win. As always, all we ask in return is that you pay it forward and share the show with someone you think needs to hear it.